in the next few minutes. But welcome everyone to our monthly ASSP Cascade chapter meeting. And I think, Jason, are you going to do the introductions for our speaker?
Yes.
I will turn it over to you, Jason.
Yes. So got a couple speakers today. One, unfortunately, is running behind. Chad Mintar, the fire chief with Coburg Fire. He is in the process of dealing with a large fire in the county. So he said he would try to call in as soon as he breaks free, but let's see where that goes. So the natures of that business, it is what it is. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Merrill Harrison. He's one of the deputy fire marshals with the Eugene Springfield Fire Department. Someone that's presented for us before is a wealth of knowledge and just an all-around a great person to work with. So he's going to talk to us a little bit today about fire prevention, fire safety, and if Chad is able to join on at some point, he was going to talk to us a little bit more about some of those differences between the metro fire departments and rural settings. Some of the stuff that tends to be an oversight in a lot of cases. We all see the everyday fire department in town, and there's very few people that really know the difference when it pertains to what you expect with a fire department when you're out in a rural setting, and how those differences play out. So hopefully Merrill can pinch hit a little bit while Chad's away, but I will turn the floor over to him.
All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks, Jason. Thanks to everybody here. Happy Fire Prevention Month. I've got to say just a little bit of thank you to this group as a whole. My interaction with you guys has been just absolutely wonderful. Great friendships and great relationships have come from this, and I learn from you guys every day. So the wealth of knowledge isn't here, right? It's in the group as a whole, and I'm extremely thankful for that. So I do apologize for my window that's in back of me. If I place myself just right, I go into the witness protection program and nobody can see me. So hopefully that doesn't get too bad, and we're able to stay to where you guys can see me. Nature of the business, yep, it sounds like Chief Chad is running behind, which happens in this business, so no problem at all. I am happy to talk, I'm able to talk, and I love to talk. So we can take this as long as we want. I'll answer any questions you guys have. And for those of you who joined us late, my wife is actually watching me do this on this call, so I've got to be on my best behavior and actually do a good presentation. So quality control is in place already for me. So anyway, all right, so a little bit about me really quick. Again, my name is Merrill Harrison. I'm a deputy fire marshal with the city of Eugene and city of Springfield Fire Department. We are a combined service for both cities, very unique in that sense where we service both cities. Our fire department answers to 2 city councils, 2 city managers, 2 mayors, and it's a very it's an interesting opportunity for our chief, I should say. And we get varying differences between those 2 cities, obviously. So it makes us extremely flexible, and we've learned the value of good communication for sure. So I am coming up on my 75th pound in the fire service. I'm at an age and a size now that I equate things to weight, and I've been in the fire service right about 75 pounds. That equals to about 25 years. So I started in 96 and have run the gamut. I worked entry-level fire up through engine companies, truck companies, all sorts of extrication, technical rescues, specialties. Have been in fire prevention the entire time. Have worked aircraft rescue at Salt Lake International Airport. And I've been deputy fire marshal for a number of years, and I'm one of very few people who can say that on a routine fire inspection call in Sundance in Utah County in Utah, I came within inches of running over Robert Redford. Thank you. Thank you. That was a product of a memo. Don't ever want to be a product of memos. And I've been a product of a memo a couple of times. So, right. That was a product of a memo. Anyway, I've been through the gamut of this stuff. I recently moved, me and my wife, we've been in this area for right about 4 years. In my current role, I'm responsible for commercial fire inspection, code enforcement. I do public education frequently, and we do also fire investigation for both cities. So I'm one of a few fire investigators for both cities. With that, let's move on into the presentation. So what I want to talk about today is just fire prevention as a whole in our commercial buildings, in our businesses, in commercial occupancies. I want to talk about just things we see, kind of the way I try to communicate this type of stuff with my customers, what I hope relationships should be, and kind of get rid of kind of that stigma of what a fire inspection could be and what it is for, and what it has been for some businesses. So one thing I really try to promote, especially with my new customers and existing customers, is just fire safety as a whole. Fire safety, fire prevention, and overall safety within our businesses should really just become a mindset, right? It becomes a way of life for us. I mean, anybody that grew up in the 80s remembers Just Say No. I mean, Nancy Reagan made that famous for all of us, and we still to this day remember Just Say No. And it was because of the way it was presented. It was because of the way it was marketed, right? We want fire safety to be just as simple, fire safety and fire prevention to be a thought as simple as buckle our seatbelt, right? Keep it simple, keep it easy, and keep everybody on the same team and looking for the same stuff. I've got a lesson plan here in front of me that we're going to try to follow, and if I veer off course, which I occasionally do, you're in for an enjoyable ride. So, all right. In a business, we highly encourage the employer or the business to make employees a part of the overall safety team, right? Most businesses will have somebody who's responsible for safety or who oversees a committee or a department or the safety portion of their business. But really, ultimately, we should try to include everybody in that safety aspect, right? Empower your employees with education and the ability to look for things that can make the situation or the environment unsafe. Safe employees take that education home, and they have safe homes, and safe homes provide for safe employees to return to work, right? So we want to provide that education for everybody. We want to make it education fun. I mean, we want to make safety fun. Safety in the past has been something where it's a very serious topic. It typically involves inspections, which involves somebody like me showing up with a badge, with a checklist, and it becomes an uncomfortable, or it can become an uncomfortable situation for businesses where they think they're in trouble, or they think they're under a microscope, or people are looking for things that are wrong. Now, we are looking for things that are wrong, but in the right mindset, it's an educational experience. We routinely, when I go, we invite safety teams or maintenance teams with us, because ultimately what the fire code becomes is a maintenance code for the building code, right? When your occupancy or business was first put into place, it was put in place with a list of requirements based on what you were doing there. And after that, building code doesn't see your business again. So fire code, with its unique specialties, comes in and provides essentially a maintenance program for your business. So combine your fire inspector with your maintenance team or your safety team, and everybody gets educated. Everybody has an opportunity to talk. I routinely have maintenance teams walk with me through inspections as part of their yearly maintenance process, right? I mean, they see things that I see things that they don't typically look for, right? And it would be no different than I go to a place of business for that business's area of expertise, right? If I go to a cabinet maker, I don't know anything about making cabinets and he does, so, or she does. And so if I go into a business, my area of expertise is looking for safety, for potential safety issues that maybe the business as a whole isn't aware of. So that open sharing of information really becomes a wonderful, wonderful tool. So with that, as I educate the teams that we go around with on our inspections, we really try to recommend fun and engaging safety tips and recommendations within the group based off stuff that we've learned, right? So, we've all seen those, little email blurbs that some companies will put out that have a good safety message in it. You'll see postings in hallways and in common gathering places with good safety messaging in it, right? That's educating the employee, empowering the employee, and it makes it fun. I mean, something that I'm extremely blessed with, and this I believe is Christie's doing at our city yard, is we come out of our city yard and we're hit with a great big display board with, that's not you? Well, it's got wonderful safety messages on it.
It's
Most of the time, oh, it's okay. So it's Katie. So, but we come out of there and they're wonderfully fun safety messages, right? They're reminders, they're fun. And again, it's that mindset that empowers the employees to become essentially extensions of the safety team and the maintenance team, right? So take the opportunity to do stuff like that. I mean, if one thing that this pandemic has taught us is it's taught us the power of a virtual meeting or of a virtual platform to communicate our message in, right? I mean, how fun, create a little clip or copy and paste a little clip and just send it out in an email blurb and a 30-second educational video on why we don't block fire exits, right? I mean, just something like that, little by little, educates people and it keeps it fun. Yeah, so with that, one new thing that we as the fire service or Eugene Springfield Fire did different this year based on our inability to go out as much, we typically during Fire Prevention Month, we visit roughly 2,500 second graders in all elementary schools between the cities of Eugene and Springfield. Because of the pandemic, we've been limited in what we've done. So we created a virtual fire safety month this year for those kids and teachers to access. And the reality is now we've reached far more than 2,500 people. We've created fun and enlightening videos, and I'll put out my plug here for all of you to go to our website, Eugene Springfield Fire, and click on our fire safety virtual presentations, and you'll see kind of some of the stuff we did for kids to help educate them on Fire Prevention Month, and the theme this year, which was, do you know the sounds of fire safety? So no reason why companies or businesses can't do something very similar, right? I mean, you have, I've seen many things from game shows about fire safety to lunches on fire safety and just engaging activities that create, that make fire safety or just safety in general fun and rewarding. So bottom line is we want to try to shift the conception of safety becomes, well, we want to make it fun and enjoyable so people remember to do it. Okay, so on inspections, when we do inspections, let me talk about the fire code just kind of in general. Like I said, fire code becomes a maintenance code for us for the building code. We go in and there's certain unique aspects of the fire code that we look at in a business, and ultimately we're maintaining that building or occupancy to the standards that were in place when that building or occupancy was constructed. So because of that, you occasionally have some different nuances between businesses, and we'll occasionally get a business owner or somebody saying, well, this may not be, this isn't required in my friend's neighboring business. And that could be very, very true. And again, it's because depending on what that occupancy is, depending on when it was built and the fire codes or standards in place, that's what we maintain to. And unless there's been an alteration, addition, or change to structure or change of occupancy, nothing will change. So some of the most common things that we see, just kind of in general, and we'll talk about them just a bit, is well, let's see, how to make sure I'm staying on track here. So some of the most common things that we see during fire inspections are the non-compliant or deficient maintenance of our fire protection systems. And so when I talk about fire protection systems, I'm talking about sprinkler systems, alarm systems. There's some of our businesses have hood suppression systems, for cooking establishments. Some of our businesses have private fire hydrants and obviously, fire extinguishers. All of our fire protection systems that are in place are required to be inspected and serviced annually. And what happens is a service provider of the customer or business's choosing comes out, does the inspection, does the maintenance, and then uploads that information, the compliance or non-compliance of the inspection, to a great big database. It's called TCE, which means the compliance engine. And I strongly recommend businesses just becoming familiar with that process. One thing I see a lot is there's a real gap in communication between the service providers and what they do and what the businesses know about it. It's a real vague process for some, and I don't honestly think that service providers provide a real good explanation of what they're doing. And so I always recommend to my businesses or to my customers to educate themselves, reach out to their service provider and establish that communication. It's about relationships. Establish the communication, have them talk to you about what their expectations are, things you could do as part of your maintenance process, and just educate yourself on that experience. And then ultimately, especially in this area where they're reporting to the compliance engine, ensure that your service provider is reporting you correctly. We oftentimes see where the system will be tagged as being compliant, but ultimately the service provider failed to complete their end of the deal and upload that information to the compliance engine. And ultimately that's what we go off of, right? We are the overseer or the authority having jurisdiction over the compliance engine. And when we see, or when the system sees or detects a non-compliant system, the business starts getting multiple letters, right? And I'm sure some of you have been in that situation where it's like, man, the fire marshal's office just keeps sending us letters. I mean, and ultimately what that ends up being is a conversation between you, the customer, and your provider. Your provider hasn't updated your status correctly. So again, get to know those providers and be a good consumer. There's nothing wrong with shopping. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we've got 3 systems. You give us a good deal if you do all 3. And be wise about when you have your inspections done, right? I've seen it where some of them have 2 and 3 inspections done throughout the year, when ultimately you can probably save a little bit on a service call if you have all of your inspections done at the same time. So be a good consumer and make that provider do what you're paying them to do to the best of their ability. Good advice. So with that, yeah. So we see non-compliance in those systems. Another thing we see a lot of is blocked exits and exit corridors. Exits are required based on occupant load, your business's, what type of occupancy you have. And we often find that these big, wide, large corridors or hallways are great places to store stuff. And it ends up being, you end up having a blocked exit. Another thing we run into is broken or unreliable exit doors. We are creatures of habit, and we typically come in and out of one spot. And a lot of these other exit doors or exit pathways that we can use become unused and don't receive any maintenance and end up being unusable in many situations. Just a little bit of history on what, or education on what those doors are is exit doors will typically have panic hardware on them, which is a single action type of a lock. They typically require 5 pounds or less of force to open. And that's very little. And I've seen some exit doors where all 300 pounds of mica hit it, the wall would shake and it won't open. And then with that too, something that people don't also realize is that irritating self-closing hardware, the one as you're pulling something through the door and it closes and it takes what you're pulling through and it shoves it back in, right? It's like the whole suitcase idea at the motel, pulling my suitcase in and that door shuts on it. We see a lot of times where that irritating self-closer device is disabled, it's taken off, or it's functionally not in use anymore. And the thing we need to realize is the reason why that self-closing hardware is actually in place is because the area that you're in is considered a fire corridor and designed to be fire safe, or to allow you to get into different sections without allowing fire spread. So that door shuts to eliminate air intake. It shuts to continue the entire relationship of the fire corridor, right? The walls are going to be fire rated, the door is going to be fire rated, ceiling's fire rated. When that door shuts, it creates that fire tight compartment that minimizes fire spread. So surprisingly, it's actually there for a very good purpose. Another thing we see with our blocked exits are where people have added additional security, right? I mean, there's a fine balance between security and safety, right? People think they go hand in hand, and then we mix them, or we cause them to conflict with each other when you've got a panic hardware door, single action, and we end up putting slide bolts in place, or we put padlocks in place, or rather than provide the maintenance needed for the door itself to maintain its functionality, we add additional security. And something that a lot of people don't think of as well with that is those features are in place for the quick removal of people from the building. They're also in place for firefighter safety, right? As firefighters are in that building in a non pristine environment, potentially, they know that if they hit that door, right, it's panic hardware. They can also escape. They're trained to do that, and that's part of their operations plan, is they can get out that door as well. Now, if it's locked, padlocked, got a big 2x4 in front of it, you prohibit potentially that you can potentially create a safety risk for our first responders. So good things to be aware of. Also with that, we see, so everybody sees illuminated exit signs, and we all see our emergency lighting in place. A lot of times we forget about things that are above our head. We just do. We never look up and we never see this stuff. So when we really miss it is when the power goes out or there's an emergency, and now all of a sudden that well-known lit environment that we're all used to is now pitch black. We have no idea where to go, and we just wish that exit sign at the end of the hall, right, was illuminated, and the emergency lighting along the hallway had been maintained and it was illuminated as well. So again, it's this type of stuff that we as a group, if we look up, employees as a whole notice potentially broken signs or unlit signs and simply pass that information along. We all become part of the safety team that we all should be a part of the work site. Let's see. We find a lot. So in in businesses, electrical rooms and sprinkler riser rooms and things like that are typically great big rooms, and they're, it's how I grew up cleaning my room, right? I would just throw everything in the closet. And if you ask my wife, that's still how I clean my room. And so I throw everything in the closet, and then the inspector comes along, opens that door, and sees that that room is full of combustible material. And by code, nothing's allowed in there. So part of what we need to do as a business or occupancy is begin that general housekeeping process, right? Of being able to throw things away, being able to properly store stuff, and ensuring that we keep those rooms free and clear of any type of storage. Let's see. Another thing we see a lot of is in businesses where there's sprinkler pipe or sprinkler heads above us. We see people using sprinkler heads as opportunities to hang stuff. We see business suits on hangers hanging in sprinkler heads. We see decorations. We see just all sorts of stuff. And what I'm just waiting for the day that they find out the hard way that system they're hanging stuff on is a wet system. And that business suit that they just pulled off just ruptured that bulb, and it's amazing how much water comes out of that head. So again, that fire protection system isn't meant to have anything hanging on the pipe. There's no load rating for it. We don't want to hang anything off of sprinkler heads. We want to avoid that. And a lot of people just flat don't realize it. So it's that educational piece. It's that opportunity to put out a little blurb in a restroom where somebody's washing their hands, a little reminder, don't hang things on a sprinkler head, or, and with that, safety messages can be tailor-made for your business and for your occupancy. Something that may be a safety issue at the city of Eugene, I don't know, I'll call out my wife, in fleet services, right, may not be a safety issue for Jason out of Glory Be, right? So tailor make your safety messages to what risk you're seeing, right? You may have an issue where, you run a commercial, business where you sell goods, and your back dock exit door is continuously blocked by packaging boxes that they stock the shelves with at night, right? And that wouldn't be the case in a dental office. So tailor make your messaging for the risk you're seeing. Anyway, a little side note there. We got off track, but that's typically what I do. Another thing we see electrical issues. We see a large amount of open junction boxes, right? Electrical outlets with covers missing. We see extension cords. Extension cords as a whole, extension cords are not allowed they're allowed in a commercial occupancy on a limited use basis. They're not intended to be a substitute for permanent wiring. So the question comes into play, well, it's only been there for 2 months. Exactly. It's been there for 2 months, right? Extension cords are meant for that limited appliance use. They're meant for, running a vacuum, for, running a drill in a maintenance situation, something like that. That's the type of use they're meant to be used in. We do recommend the use, and you can use power strips. Power strips have come a long way in the years that I've been in the business. It used to be you bought a power strip and it had a cord that was about that long, and it hung off the wall and it looked ridiculous. And you couldn't put it anywhere, and it ended up being more of a fire risk because you broke it off the wall and it broke the outlet. But now they come in a surprisingly wide array of cord sizes. They have flush mount capabilities where the plug doesn't actually stick out of the plug. And then you've got just that secondary breaker device between whatever you're running and the wall. But now you have to remember as well, we are a society we take advantage of any possible, easier way of doing things that we can. And so with that, we routinely take, an electrical engineer designed that wall outlet for the its capabilities. I'm not an electrical engineer, but I do know that if I stick a great big 6-hole multi-plug adapter into that 2-plug hole, the odds of me using that plug to a rating it's not capable of being used to is pretty high, right? So we don't use those. I mean, it's just that type of stuff that we forget. We're not aware of. We don't intend to do these things, but through education, we remind ourselves, oh, I shouldn't plug 3 microwaves into that 6-hole outlet. Nope, right? So it's that type of stuff that a lot of businesses, right, they really watch out for. They send their maintenance teams out, they remove extension cords, they remove multi-plug adapters, and they provide those educational tools as reminders and blurbs and safety messages just on things we shouldn't do. Let's see, portable space heater safety. So I've got to put a plug in for that. Portable space heaters are allowed. They are allowed by fire code, but there are safety regulations with that. We see portable space heaters under desks, right? We've all seen them. As the weather changes, legs get cold, and we have portable space heaters there. So with that, just remember, portable space heaters should be plugged into an outlet, directly into a wall outlet, never into an extension cord, never into a power strip, never into anything like that. It's directly into a wall. They should always have 3 feet of combustible free space around them. And as a rule, it's a good policy to do an internal policy that you unplug those space heaters at night. Case in point, and this has happened here just not too long ago here in the city of Eugene. The space heaters are placed under the table or under the desk. The weather warms up, they're forgot about because they're thermostatically controlled, so they don't kick on, and we're not uncomfortably cold, and we don't check them. And we routinely place items or belongings under our desk or at our feet. And we all know the city of Eugene never has erratic weather. Right? It's consistently, we can count on it to be exactly the temperature we hope for. One night, 3 in the morning, the temperature drops below what the thermostat is set at, and voila, we have ignition of the portable space heater sitting directly adjacent to somebody's personal belongings, or as I like to call it, fuel. And boom, we have a fire that ignites under a desk in a business, and that happens. That happens all the time, and it's because we don't realize that's what can occur, and it goes back to that educational component. It's about educating ourselves on the possibilities we weren't aware of and looking outside the box and keeping that safety mentality in place, right? Always looking for ways to keep us safe. So another thing we see just from a maintenance standpoint in parking lots and what have you, there's FDC connections for a lot of our buildings. That's a fire department connection for a lot of our businesses where we'll come in, actually park a truck and supply water to the sprinkler system or fire suppression system for the building. We'll see where those spaces are blocked, or the fire department connection itself is hidden by vegetation or things like that. So maintenance of those systems is important, and with that, just emergency parking as a whole is important as well. We see some businesses that allow the courtesy of parking in the non-allowed or in the emergency parking. And, if my business had an emergency, I would much rather emergency crews could get in rather than, right, having, personal cars parked in place. And another good one. So we live in a society of noises, right? We live in a society of alarms, beeps, and we have conditioned ourselves, the old term train the brain, right? Muscle memory is what we rely on when emergencies happen. If there's an actual emergency, our heart rate goes to 200 beats a minute, and we're capable of just simple functions like single action hardware, right? Like pushing on a door. Critical thinking goes out the door. So in that instance, we need to make sure that we've trained appropriately. So nowadays, especially, and we're seeing this across the board. We're seeing this with kids at home. We're seeing this with people in business, but people have trained themselves not to react to alarms or to, you know, evacuation signals, things like that. And we need to make sure that we take those seriously and retrain ourselves to move. I've been on alarms here locally where we show up on site and we've still got people inside with the fire alarm going and they're on the phone or still sending emails, right? And it's because it's just a false alarm. It's just, right? We need to make sure that we're training people to react. And this goes across the board. This goes at home too. I mean, if you have kids at home, train them to react to your smoke detector. I scared the daylights out of my wife one night when I told her, I said, our kids won't react to the smoke alarm. And she said, yeah, they will. No, they didn't. 2 o'clock in the morning, I set it off till it wouldn't go off anymore. The battery went dead and they didn't move, right? And that's how we as a society have gotten. We've got to retrain ourselves to react to the noise, to take it seriously no matter what we're doing, to get up and go. And it's part of the business's responsibility to ensure you're conducting those drills, right? Conduct the drill, make it fun, make it enjoyable. Oftentimes we see to where it's presented as a nuisance, it is a nuisance, and you know, it just, if we rethink how we present this stuff and how we educate on it, you know, send out blurbs on what the drill's for, what we do, where our meeting place is. You know, the time to fail is during the drills. The time to get lost trying to get out of your environment is during these drills, right? So that education portion and that practicing portion are key. You know, a great example of that is, you know, it's where, you know, we have kids that routinely have evacuation drills at school, and it is simple for them. The alarm goes off, they get up, they know right where they're going, they know who they're walking with, they know the little hump in the grass as they go out the door. It's not a big deal. And these same kids don't wake up at home, right? They wouldn't have any clue how to get out of their own home in case of emergency. And it goes back to just train the brain, right? So do your evacuation drills in your businesses, educate your folks on why they're good and what they are for, where the meeting place is, you know, enlighten them on the different exit options. You know, we as a society, like I said, are creatures of habit. There's been case studies to where emergencies have blocked exits that we've come in and out of, and we will hesitate to still try to get out of that exit rather than remembering there's an exit just around the corner from us, right? So those become very, very handy. And then, you know, one of the last things, and I think I'm taking up a ton of time. I'm not sure if Chief's here yet, but we can open it up for questions as well. But, you know, just general housekeeping as a whole. We routinely, and it's fine by me, we routinely go into businesses and we become the bad guy for that one person with that dirty cubicle, right? We'll be walking with a supervisor, with maintenance, and you know, we'll get that. Could you say something about that? And sure, right? I mean, it meets the level of what I would consider a fire risk, and so, you know, we do that. But keep things neat, keep them orderly. You know, fire code provides direction for that, and ultimately by doing that, you reduce fuel load and reduce fire risk. So I'll probably wrap this up real quick. We'll see if the Chief's here, but I just wanted to leave you guys with a little note that I read just barely before getting on here today. It's in a little fire safety kind of a blog, and it talks about potential changes in safety coming up. And apparently they've said that the new exit signs are always going to be on the way out. And with that glorious joke that was horrible. I'll end my talk and open it up for. See, now I'm getting sympathy laughs like, oh, why did we invite him to talk? That was horrible, right? So, if
those are dad jokes, we like them.
Right. You want to hear one more really quick? So last night, I wanted to try alligator, but I didn't have a crock pot. Oh my God. So right now is probably when my wife is signing off going, oh, sweetie. So with that, if the chief's here, we can pass it along, or I'm happy to answer questions. We can talk about specifics. I know I kind of threw a lot in there, but I'm here to answer questions for you guys. And I can provide contact information as well. Oh, one more thing before I forget. Any of your inspectors that you guys have at your businesses, right? Call them, maintain a relationship with them, start a relationship with them, get to know them, right? Ask them questions, make them work for you. I mean, I get phone calls all the time from my customers that I've done inspections for because they know they can ask me anything. We would much rather provide direction before it becomes a problem than after the fact. And so maintain the relationship, start them, and make your inspector. So that's what I got.
Hi, I had a question about your space heaters.
Sure.
So you indicated that extension cords should not be used. Why is that?
So typically, space heaters, microwaves, things like that, they're high amperage draw appliances. And ultimately, a lot of it comes down to, we're not educated. The normal person isn't educated on the proper cords to potentially have. And so just simply based on the ability that it could remain in place, the large amount of draw they provide, and there's just simply not rated for it, they recommend always plugging it into the wall outlet itself.
So if you had an increased gauge of wire that was designed to handle the amperage load, then that'd be suitable?
No, because it would still fall back on the extension cord can't be used as a substitute for permanent wiring.
But what if, to argue that, you discussed how they should be unplugged every day, which would indicate it's a temporary system. So would that matter?
So ultimately, it just goes back to what the code says. And code, you can leave them plugged in. You certainly can. Unplugging them is a recommendation, just a safety recommendation. But code itself is very clear on not allowing them to be plugged into anything but the wall outlet itself, and especially not extension cords, just based on the fact they're not designed for to be a substitute for permanent wiring.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I have a question for you, Merrill. What do you see in like the hazmat arena when you're going into a business that we might see at our own workplaces, chemical storage, things like that?
Yeah, so something, so with that, just a little entry into that. So when it comes to hazardous materials, we have what we call reportable quantities. And any of you that have dealt with that type of stuff know that whatever quantities you have at your location it's based on a criteria, on size of your occupancy, on the type of material. Your suppression system is also based off of that as well. Something we routinely run into is businesses will, and especially now with a potential supply shortage, people are stockpiling product. And what ends up happening is we've then created the potential for, if there's an emergency, the suppression system in place will be overwhelmed by the product and not actually do its job. So again, there's reasons why that stuff's in place. And it's reportable quantities just for the fact that we, as a suppression department or operations, we know what we're going into, right? I mean, we know that if we're going to 1, 2, 3, flammable road, that we're going to have these type of hazardous materials there. It's going to be in these type of quantities. It's going to be in these locations, and they're only allowed to be, some types of hazardous materials aren't allowed to be stored with other types of hazardous materials. And so based on inspection and based on requirements, we can keep that situation as safe as possible for our incoming crews. But all that stuff's established initially as you start your business. It's through, building code, it's through fire code initially. And then it's just simply maintained from that point on. Does that answer that for you, Christy?
Yep, thanks.
Yeah.
Another question for you, Merrill. I know your area of expertise is kind of the city of Eugene, but our other chief looks like the fire has kept him away. Any experience that you have that might want to share of how things are different for folks that might be out in the Coburg area or Fall Creek or outside of the Eugene Springfield environment? I see a number of participants here who aren't in the Eugene Springfield area.
Sure. So I'll give just a little overview, and if I don't cover specifically what you're wanting to know, ask. So ultimately, out of bigger municipal areas, your available crews can decrease, and in return, response times can increase just due to availability. We're very fortunate in Lane County to have the services that we do, and that's in Lane County as a whole. Our outlying protection districts are extremely blessed with the quality of fire departments they have. For so long there was such this comparison between a volunteer department and a full-time department. Eugene Springfield is it's staffed 24/7. There's 16 stations. There's 350 line crew, and they're strategically located throughout the city for optimum response times, and that's a blessing. The reality is there's people in departments in Lane County as a whole that are trained at the same level, right? There's that comparison is not accurate per se. The only difference is they may work a different full-time job, right? It's the same quality of service. It's the same quality of care. It just may, based on logistics, it may be delayed just a little, or there may be a few other things in place that get the full operational assignment on scene. One thing that we do see that is tougher in outer line areas is the inspection process, right? Maybe due to staffing or budgets or just time. Our outer line departments are busy departments. They handle a call volume that's large, and oftentimes they may not be able to perform routine inspections on places unless requested. And that's another reason why I highly recommend establishing relationships with your businesses, with your customers in those areas, or reaching out and just requesting an inspection, right? Take the opportunity to not think of an inspection as you're going to get me in trouble, but to reach out and say, hey, could you guys come and look at my building? And that does a number of things. It provides them with an opportunity to come do it. They could potentially do it on a drill night, right? It provides them the opportunity to look at it from an operational standpoint as to how they would potentially, mitigate a problem in the building, what their attack strategies would be. It gets them familiar with the building itself, and they can actually provide you with recommendations on, safety items that you may have overlooked. But ultimately, if you have specifics, you can ask, but there's, the level of care and the level of service doesn't change. You just may have a little smaller delay just based on the logistics of where people are located and where the stations are. But we are amazingly blessed in this county with the with the quality of service we had. We all have mutual aid agreements too, right? I mean, it's not uncommon to see a Eugene Springfield unit on a call with Jason up in Mohawk. We work very well together. Years ago, that wasn't the case. I mean, it's been many years ago, but you know, it was pretty much, hey, stay out of my area. You know, don't come past A Street. You know, that type of stuff with the fire service. But the relationships we have with our departments and the mutual aid agreements in place are an absolute blessing, and they work well. And I just want to make sure everybody knows that it's the same level of care and the same service. So, yeah. And if you have something specific, I can answer that too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thomas, yes.
So back in 97, when I came here, we used to have a care alert group that did regional trainings with the hazmat teams in relation to the university and to other bigger businesses. Since then, we've gone to a regional group that is our interface for that care energy. Haven't seen since Y2K or 2000 any big practices or integrations with businesses. Is there anything on the radar for the future?
Not that I'm aware of. You bring up a good point. There's nothing that I'm aware of that would address that specifically. Yeah. I don't know.
And while I've got everyone's attention, the Great Shakeouts Thursday, if you're not participating, you might think about it.
It's all about preparation, right?
Yep.
Amen. We got plenty of time. Ask away. Ask away. If you don't, I'm just going to tell more dad jokes. So ask away.
One other question on how does does the Eugene Springfield Department relate to businesses around confined spaces and confined space rescue?
Okay, so we do have a technical rescue confined space team. And as it relates to businesses, I guess I don't understand the question. Expand on that just a bit. So
want me to help out?
Yes, absolutely. Jump in.
So basically, I think he's talking about the gap between service provider and providing your own technical teams when you're actually going into confined spaces. I know that we've got a technical team with the city of Eugene, but they're not a business's exit strategy or out for actually having a technical team on site when you're going into a confined space. You need.
Okay, so let me see. So ultimately, it would seem to me the answer would be in a, it sounds like that might be an OSHA involved question as well, right? You know, what's allowed based on safety circumstance and individual business situations. My experience is when there is an on-site technical rescue or confined space team, it's a larger facility, obviously, and our mutual aid agreements come into place. I hope that's answering what you're wondering. I think it just ultimately boils down to safe practices, right, based off safety requirements for what type of confined space you're doing. Awareness, education, right, and just ensuring that you're properly trained to do that type of stuff would be, paramount. I guess I'm still just a little uncertain of what you're asking, but hopefully that kind of gets there.
Well, can I talk about what we do, fire and public works, and I don't know how it relates to the other businesses,
Yeah.
but we maintain all of this waste and stormwater system in the city of Eugene. So we do a lot of confined space entries. We have a working relationship with the confined space rescue team. We have regular conversations about our permits, who we contact, make sure our contact information is accurate. And we have a couple of facilities that are pretty challenging. And when we are making entries into those facilities, one of them being a stormwater vault that's down in near Maury Jacobs Park, we are in contact with the Eugene Fire Department. They know we're doing that entry that day. They're basically on standby in case we have a problem. And we talk about what that looks like, and they want to get in and see what it's going on when it's in different times of the year. And we go in regularly to clean out the sediment and anything else that gets in there. And weirdly, humans get in there and leave all sorts of things behind, which is kind of scary because we all know the hazards of a confined space. But it's a time for us to talk about our working relationship, who does what kind of equipment do you have, and actually drill with each other on a somewhat regular basis. So that's what our relationship is. Whether or not that's because we both work for the city of Eugene, I'm not sure, because that's just my experience, but we do have a relationship. Is that what you're getting to, Thomas?
Well, because I'm not the regulator, I might defer to Jim to make a qualified statement. I have written and rewritten the state's code with the state several times, so I do understand it fairly high level.
Appreciate your answers, and it looks like we're just out of time. So I don't know if there's any last burning questions, but while we wait for that, just wanted to thank Merrill for presenting today and sharing all your wealth of knowledge and just all of your willingness to answer any and all questions. Really appreciate the time that you spent today coming with us. So if there's one last burning question, we might have time for that. But thank you again.
If anybody has anything additional they want to talk with where it's not in front of anybody, call me. I'm available to anybody. Real quick, I'm at MB Harrison, HARRISON at eugene-or.gov. My number is 541-682-7126. Ensure you put the B on my email address, MB. There is an M Harrison in it. If it goes there, it won't get to me. So MB Harrison at eugene-or.gov, and I'm happy to help you guys with anything. So.
And Christy put that in the chat for us. So again, thank you so much, Merrill. Really appreciate your time. We will gather again as our chapter next month at the same time, third Tuesday. And so hope everyone has a good month. And thank you again.
Thank you, Merrill. Thanks for pitch hitting.
Guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.